I want to get straight to my next guest, who is the great Paul Kelly, a turkey farmer, whose family farm has been in his family for over 50 years, which is an amazing feat. And I'm really delighted to have him on because yesterday in the House of Commons, there was a big debate followed by a vote over the family farm tax, of which I think nearly all Labour MPs voted against stopping this inheritance tax change on family farms, which is going to, in my opinion, decimate the farming community and undermine our food security. But don't take my word for it. We've got a great expert in Paul. Paul, how are you?
Fine. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, delighted to have you on. Look, you're the man who understands the real pain. And can I say thank you for your service to the nation, as well as what you have done for generations. I think it's important. And I think people like myself haven't done enough to actually talk up farmers. And the Conservative Party certainly have a long way to go to win back the trust of farmers too after 14 years in power. Don't get me wrong. But I'm keen to hear from you, Paul, with this. What's the impact going to be for you and your farm overall? Are you dismayed? Do you think there's any hope that there'll be any concessions made by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and Sir Keir Starmer?
I think when they look into the food safety, and the food, just the food structure for the nation, feeding the nation, they would have to, because they've got it wrong. The Treasury based all their figures on, people that have claimed agricultural relief, and they're right. A few percentage of people will be affected. The problem is there are thousands of smallholders in the country that have an agricultural holding number that isn't worth over a certain amount. So yes, the percentage of people claiming agricultural relief with all those smallholders is very few. But I'm a farmer. I have hundreds of farmer friends, and I do not know one that isn't absolutely devastated, because whilst farmers might be worth a lot of money, they don't make a lot of money. That's why you have inheritance tax free, the land, because they know you cannot possibly, as a farmer, generate enough cash in your business to pay big lumps of inheritance tax. Land is overvalued in real terms. People will get 0.5% return on it. So the only way a farmer will pay off any big tax bills is to sell land. Now, when a farmer sells that, if he's a 400-acre farm, he has to sell 100 acres to pay the tax bill. He's a 300-acre farm. He's got the cost of his tractor and his combine and his labour over 300 acres, not 400 acres. So then you have to lay someone off. You become inefficient, and it's wrong. But they have got the figures wrong, and I think they know they've actually made a big boo-boo here.
Well, I think what's concerning for me is, and you've said it, farmers are going to have to sell off land. And I thought the whole purpose of this policy was to stop wealthy people, conglomerates, buying up land to either avoid inheritance tax or to obviously offset carbon. Now, by doing this very thing, the very people that you want to own farmland are going to be forced to sell it, and actually it will therefore then feed the system of the very wealthy in society being able to buy up for their own gain and interest. The Jeremy Clarksons of this world, for example, if they want to buy up more land, can do that because they have the financial ability to do so. If James Dyson wants to buy up more land, he has to do it. But this isn't going to hurt those people, as you say. This policy is going to hurt people like yourself and the many thousands of farmers across our country. And this is where I'm just left baffled and confused by the unwillingness to sit down and have a pragmatic conversation and try and find a middle ground. Dan Needle, who's someone who is a Labour activist but a respected economist, even said that he, on reflection, having looked at the figures after the budget, realised that changes needed to be made. And he said that he would remove that threshold from the 3 million up to 20 million to make sure that the people you are going to hit in the pocket are the very people that you say are doing the very thing to avoid tax. And that way, then, that would protect your average family farmer whilst also still making a point to those who are trying to do wrong and undermine the farming community. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely, 120%. And you're absolutely right. We all agree. Those with oodles of money that just want to put money into land to save paying tax, they need to pay their fair share of tax. But what this is doing is hitting genuine, honest farmers that are feeding the nation, have been in the family business. They've had the family farm for hundreds of years, many of them. That's who it's hurting. They're attacking the wrong people. Then they will have to revisit it. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete car crash for the farming industry. Absolutely desperate. And
I think what I'm also intrigued by is the fact that, we're putting more and more pressure, for example, farmers having to turn agricultural land into these solar farms that, might make us feel better because the idea that somehow this is going to power our country. But reality is very different. If I think, in my time in politics, if I've learned anything, globalisation hasn't worked in the interests, really, of this nation in a while. If I look at the community I serve, an urban area like Stoke-on-Trent, you know, the ceramics industry's moved predominantly to China, to Turkey, to even Portugal, where they subsidise energy, and to India, because obviously labour's cheaper, energy prices are cheaper, they don't have the green subsidies. Globalisation has meant the potteries industry has been decimated. I think the same, and I think my fear here, if we're overly reliant on having to import food, that means we're allowing other countries, as we've seen with Putin over energy, as we saw with China over PPE, able to distort the market, which will ramp up prices on the shelves and ultimately make us more reliant on others in the world. When actually what we should want is as much as what can be grown in the United Kingdom is grown in the United Kingdom and put on our shelves. And even if that means sometimes having to pay slightly more, it's going to be a damn sight better in terms of our food security than having to rely on imports where tariffs could be applied or the international order could be disrupted, where prices will suddenly ramp up excessively and therefore really hit people in the pocket, along with the changes to national insurance that farmers will be feeling, as will obviously supermarkets, along with the changes, as you say, to not just the land, but also to the business rates relief that you've been experiencing, where your combine, your tractor is all going to be taken into account. That actually helps you hit that 3 million target much easier rather than just the land itself that you sit on. I just think this is a very sad state of affairs. And I just thought I'd come with you, really, Paul, to the last word of what can be done now by the farming community. Is it just sit and wait, or is it that there'll be more action taken on the streets?
No, well, I think, you know, Tom Bradshaw, the NFU president, has had a lot of time with the politicians to really explain the situation, that the figures you've had it put in front of you are wrong. You're looking at the wrong set. If you actually look at genuine farmers, they're going to be hit hard and they will have to make some changes. But I think we all agree that, you know, the very rich people that are just buying land to park money not to pay tax, that's wrong.
Yep.
And we have to find a way of getting those people. Guys, you can't do that. You know, farmland is for farming by farmers, and we've got to feed the nation. And they have to have a food policy in place that will allow that to happen. Because you're right, what I find staggering is people have a very short memory. If we go back to Ukraine, the price of wheat and soya, we had food inflation of 22%. Now, if we had we could feed our nation. We could feed ourselves, right? And like you say, if we just paid a little bit more for certain products, we could be very, very self-reliant on food and wouldn't have to have all the imports. And that makes an awful lot of sense for any government, surely.
Well, I agree with you, Paul, entirely on this. And I just want to say thank you again for all you're doing. I'm sure as a turkey farmer, this is a very busy time of year. Wishing you and your family and all your friends in the farming community a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I hope to God that Steve Reed gets round the table with Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and says it's time to be pragmatic. It's time to swallow a bitter pill.